Hello, everybody, and welcome to XenTegra's IGEL Weekly Podcast. I am your guest host today, Patrick Toner, filling in for Andy Whiteside, who will not be joining us. And I'm joined by two good friends, two familiar voices, if you listen to the podcast, from IGEL, Chris Feeneey and Sebastian Perusat. Chris, we'll start with you. How you doing, man?
I am a meteorologist this week, or at least a hack, at least at one. It's hurricane season. We've talked about this before, and so we've got one that's coming up the East Coast, and it's coming our way. So I'm kind of keeping my eyes on that. But yeah, I mean, it is a season. But here's the best part, right? The reason why I'm even bringing this up, I have deliberately chosen to join this podcast from my Microsoft AVD. Thank you, IGEL, for providing one. It's coming out of the Netherlands, and I've got this podcast with a Zoom call and Teams optimization coming from my big LG with my EPOS headset. Sorry, I feel like I have to introduce all the sponsors we work with. But the point being, I could be sitting in Denver, Colorado, and still be able to work, disrupted by some event that happens, unfortunately for others down in Florida, really bad. But we talk about on this podcast work from anywhere and that type of thing, and this is truly a scenario where I'm trying to live that out. So, but yeah, little kind of keep my eyes on this thing. We don't know how bad it's going to get, but yeah, thank you. Sorry for that little long entry.
No. I mean, it's
excited to be here.
It's clearly we're all watching the Weather Channel right now. We've been talking before we started the podcast here. It's just hopefully you guys are spared and nothing too major, Chris. So we'll definitely be thinking about you guys, and we actually completely missed our area, which we're very fortunate. We're in the Jacksonville area, and it kind of went out to sea, kind of went around us. We had strong winds last night, but no damage, thankfully. I know a lot of people were not as fortunate. Not to make light of it, we've kind of realized that moving to Florida, everything's basically flipped. The kids are sick in the summer because we're all inside instead of the winter, and instead of like watching snow forecasts, we're all watching hurricane forecasts, like watching the Weather Channel. We'd be watching the Weather Channel in like December, January, February. So it's really just everything's just kind of flipped around. Kind of a weird thing.
Yeah, when Jim Cantori shows up in your neighborhood, it's time to get out of Dodge.
Yeah, get out. That's it. 100%. All right. Well, Seb, how you doing, man? No hurricanes out in Europe, so I think you should be.
No, that's what I wanted to say. I mean, in comparison to what you are living at the moment, we are feeling like, let's say, quite long summertime. It's still a bit colder outside, but yeah, well, as we also discussed offline, hurricanes and such kind of things are pretty rare in Europe, especially where I'm living. But even if you live near the coast, you have storms, but hurricanes are something which happens maybe one time per century or something like that. So obviously we are following also the news on American channels, but we are not targeted as you are. And just keep my finger crossed for all your friends and family that everyone is healthy and will survive it as best as possible. But besides that, I was in IGEL headquarters at the beginning of the week. So I was in Bremen for the second time in 3 years due to COVID. So really good to see pre-sales people from the support team, and discuss some community processes. No, it was really good. So thanks for asking. I'm doing well. And kind of enjoying our good weather at the moment.
Nice. And you said it was a community event out there in Bremen?
No. It was just community discussions together with pre-sales, how to engage different departments and so on. So more internal processes. But we had a meetup yesterday evening together with Digitrade and the Cobra Stick. So if you didn't have the chance to watch that product, because Chris already mentioned more or less the whole IGEL Ready partnership, but I have one more, which is called Cobra Stick, which is a secure USB stick together with a PIN pad and a smart card two-factor authentication, where the IGEL OS is installed on it. So you have even if the UD Pocket and IGEL OS is already pretty secure, there you have on the hardware level the highest amount of encryption possible. So even if the UD Pocket gets stolen, lost, or whatever, if someone would like to target your environment, I would not say it's impossible, but it's highly complicated to get it hacked. So if you didn't have the chance, watch the Digitrade Cobra Stick meetup. We will make it online in a couple of days. So if you couldn't join, I'm happy to share the link with you.
Very cool. Maybe some maybe a blog in the future and a XenTegra
Oh yeah,
podcast. Who knows? That sounds like a cool technology. I've not seen that.
yeah, it's
Um,
really, really impressive. But that's it. Yeah, doing what besides that.
Very good. Very good. Well, guys, we're going to be kicking off our topic this week.
Yeah.
We've got something a little. It's a good Friday topic. We're recording on a Friday today. We usually record on Tuesdays, so we're in Friday mode. So just full disclaimer to anybody listening. We're in Friday mode, so we might be a little more laid back than usual. I think this is a good topic. I think this is a good one that it's inevitable. You're going to deal with this topic, and that is updating the OS via the UMS. We've talked about that a couple different ways you can do it. What I like about this blog that you've done, Seb, it goes through multiple methods on how you would do this. I'm going to go ahead and share that out, but I'll let you kind of introduce it, Seb.
Yeah, sure. So we have in that case started already a couple of weeks ago with the buddy update process, which is, let's say, the advanced mode of delivering updates to the endpoint. But I'm still, even if it's sometimes hard to believe, not saying that the people are not reading the documentations, I wouldn't do that either, but deploying an update via our standard way, so via our management tool, which is called IGEL Universal Management Suite, sounds pretty basic, but I still get questions regarding that. And the first one is, in the community, it's not happening every day, but one time a week sometimes, is why should I update the operating system? Just because it's working. So we never covered that one extremely deeply. The video is covering a few of that topics, but I just want to point out that even if something is working on your endpoint, and we all know that Azure OS is already pretty secure, never forget that the Azure OS operating system is just one part of the chain. You have your UEFI, you have your BIOS, you have your boot process, you have the operating system, you have your clients, and you have your network and your backend. And if you think of your endpoint, you will have, that's at least 90% of our customership, a connection to something, like to Citrix, to AVD, to Microsoft AVD, to VMware Horizon, and so on. So you have clients. In some specific parts of the company, you might use a web browser to access your Citrix storefront or Netscaler. So even if it works, never forget that a web browser can be unsecure if you forget to update it. There are security updates also on the Azure OS operating side, not only coming from Azure, but coming from the market, like new drivers, like fixes for some SSH daemon leak that went over. So there's a lot of reason, but the main point for me is security. And in the second step, you might not want to miss new feature that the newer clients are delivering. Like if you think of the Teams optimization, if you would stay on the state from last year, you would not have a proper and fluent experience with your Teams optimization. So your audio and video redirection would not work as fluent as it is at the moment. Sometimes you also have a newer Citrix environment on the backend, but you need also a newer client on the endpoint to get a connection working. And that's all the stuff where I'm saying, never forget to update your endpoint. I'm not saying update it on day one. So if we push an 11 or 9, 100 version out, test it, because every update has also sometimes some pitfalls, but saying, give it a few days, test it in your lab. But usually I would recommend to stay as much as possible to the latest version that we released, especially if we think about the rolling releases.
Yeah, there's some great points, Seb, and there's probably not too many technologies out there. Similar to IGEL in the sense that you'll have so many customers. When you start to engage with customers in the field, they bring you into their environment. Hey, here's what we're doing. And they're like, yeah, your firmware is like a year old. Oh yeah, but it just works. It just works. We don't want to touch it. We don't want to mess with it. I get that. I get, the stability of it. But to your point, there's a lot of other things to consider. It's not just about how solid does it work. There's a good chance it'll just work in a newer firmware, but you have to test it. But it's all those other things you were talking about: security, features. I can't think of how many times you've had the opposite, where somebody's saying, "Hey, this isn't working," or they have a bug. Well, the first thing you want to try is, okay, well, let's look at release notes. What's in the new version of the firmware? What's in the new version of the Workspace app or the Horizon client? And you update, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, it works now. It's fixed.
Yeah.
So, there are a lot of, there's bug fixes, there's feature updates, there's, in IGEL world, you have new kernels and new driver support. So, And there's all different reasons that you want to stay local. So it's really great topic here. You know, I showed up on the screen here, anyone who's watching, you know, it's kind of broken down here into different sections. But Seb, are you ready to just kick the video off and
Yeah,
talk
please.
through it? All right, so we'll go ahead and do that.
Lovely. So we'll just make the introduction that we are doing usually. So speaking about the reasons why I made the video, why I would recommend to update the firmware. So that's what we already discussed. So if you go then to the original part of the video, you will see that I'm using in that specific tutorial the IGEL UMS. Why that? Because that's, let's say, the typical way like our customers are deploying updates. Not saying that the only one, not saying it's the most performant one I would recommend, but for the standard use case that you're following, I would definitely work this way. So first of all, you have to know that we are working on Linux. You don't have to take care of separate packages to keep updated. IGEL is delivering to you on a regular basis a new firmware. The new firmware can be checked from our webpage if you want to do that by your hand, but you can also right-click the Universal Firmware Update feature in your UMS console, speaking about the Java console, and check for new firmware. And if your network connectivity is working as expected, the UMS console will ask our repository, is there something on our side that you could update? Important thing on the video is you see that I'm taking a pull-down menu and checking also older firmwares. Obviously, you can also download older firmwares, but at the same time, never forget that this feature will only look for updates available for your devices. That means that if you have a device that you registered to the UMS 10 years ago, which is having a Windows a snapshot state, it will also look for that kind of devices, not only for the Linux ones. Just a small hint, not extremely important, but just wanted to say that it can be misleading sometimes. So then you can click on the checkbox and saying download, and the UMS will do the job for you. It will download the file, it will deploy it inside of our web service, which is a Tomcat UMS web dev, sorry, a Tomcat web dev, so web directory, and make it available there for your endpoints. I mentioned if the check is not successful, it's usually related to the network. So you go to UMS administration, Universal Firmware Update, and there is a test server connection. Forget the second red ribbon, if it's something red over there. Just concentrate on connection test on the first one, and you should see a green connection successfully tested. If not, please check if you need a proxy. Please check if your UMS server is available to talk to the whole internet. I mean, not speaking about the whole internet, but specific servers from IGEL. And if that one is the case, you usually be able to download the file into the UMS. But sometimes the customer is saying, hey, I don't want to give internet access to my UMS server or to the UMS application, which is fine. Then you can just go to igel.com, software -download, and you can download the corresponding firmware, which is a zip file, to your device. One extremely important thing, even if it's at least pretty clear if you are a long-time IGEL customer, you have the firmware updates and you have the OSC versions. OSC versions are only meant to be deployed directly to the device by using a USB stick, PXE appliance, and so on. If you want to update an existing device, please use the firmware updates and not the OSC version, which is meant by OS Creator. So as soon as you download that, zip file, like I said, it's not mandatory if you already have a connection, but if you want to do that by hand, you can just right-click the Universal Firmware Update element in your UMS console and saying, hey, upload the actual firmware file to the UMS and make it available there without the need to have an internet access. And what is happening behind the scenes is basically that we are downloading the file, like you did. We are uploading the zip file into the UMS server in a cache. Then the zip file is getting extracted to your UMS_file transfer folder, which is available in your UMS server file system, and create more or less a profile out of it. I know it sounds a little bit complicated, but it isn't. In former times, you created a profile for more or less everything, but we have some automatism in our UMS that if you want to fulfill a specific use case, the UMS is doing the job for you. In that case, it will create the profile. It will auto-detect the UMS IP address and port and so on. And that's where the update process is taking over, at least the import process is taking over that task automatically for you. So as soon as the file is uploaded, so we'll just give it a couple of seconds that the video is joining my explanation. Is there something unclear in the meantime, Patrick, we would like to discuss, or is it pretty straightforward?
No, this is great. I mean, and it's probably worth noting. I mean, most customers are probably not going to download the firmware, externally, but there are those times. I've worked with customers in the past. Maybe they don't allow any internet connections from the UMS server. Chris, you were in Fed.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that was probably pretty popular in the Fed space. So if you have a highly secured network, you're probably going to need to do it, this way, where you're downloading it from the website, importing it into the server, uploading it.
Yeah, the biggest challenge there is the way we license devices. Downloading firmware certainly, if you're going to use UMS to try to do it, but it's more the licensing piece. The UMS, in order to properly license devices, has to talk to the license portal in the sky, and you can set up routing rules or whatever to make sure that you can properly do that, but that's really key. On the Fed side, that was not an issue, that was an issue in the sense of, obviously this is an air-gapped network, meaning it doesn't talk to the internet. So we had to work through ways to license devices there, as well as obviously download firmware and generally speaking, download, burn it to CD, bring it over, scan it, bring it back into the network on, that type of thing. Multiple steps involved. So, but it was always a separate download and then imported into UMS, for example. So
yeah, and it's kind of goes back to that whole. I mean, it's definitely the secure way to do it. I've had customers there too. They're just super secure. They will not allow UMS to speak out to the internet. So it's one of those things that it's just as the admin, it's going to be a little bit more of an inconvenience. You're just going to have to go through a few more steps, but it definitely it'll work and it'll work well. Just not as fast.
Yeah, that's basically what I wanted to mention too. Especially if you look at older UMS servers or maybe at your own one. Sometimes the download process that we are using is a little bit slower than what you are using maybe on your laptop or on your internet breakout. And that's where also some customers who are working from somewhere, but not from the main data center, are downloading the file and uploading them internally to the UMS server because of quality of service or whatever reason. And I just remember that we had a couple of times on customer sites where I downloaded the file via 4G LTE, and the customer started to download on their side, and I was faster and just said, okay, if it's okay for you and from your security policies, I will download the file on my USB stick and over to you, and we can just upload it then in the local console. So sometimes it's also definitely a performance topic because the UMS server isn't needing a lot of bandwidth to the internet usually. So that can also be a reason.
Got it. So now it looks like in the video you've uploaded the firmware. You've you imported it as a zip file. Do you want to back up a little bit here? So it looks like then you dragged it onto the device.
Yeah, perfect. Just to the end of the last section, if you can maybe just go 10 seconds back. Yeah, perfect. So just wanted to mention here, if you can pause maybe that window for a second. We have the view of what I call the UMS Universal Update Profile, which you will, per drag and drop, assign to an endpoint, to a folder, to a view, or whatever. This is really important to double check because sometimes your UMS server can also have multiple IP addresses, can also have issues with DNS, and you just want to be sure that the download will be downloaded. So even for debugging purposes, because I'm not covering that in the video, but I can tell you a few things about that. You are assigning that to the endpoint. You're saying update, and the endpoint is saying, hey, I cannot reach the ftp.igel.de URL. It's not your fault. It's just saying that it cannot resolve the UMS server where it wants to download from, and it will try to get it from a generic address, which is not existing, by the way. So you're not having to build up some firewall rules or whatever. Please just check if you go to your firmware file and checking the host, the protocol, the port, and the target URL. There is a simple way to check that. Go to your endpoint to the IGEL OS, open the local Firefox or Chromium, whatever you prefer, and then you enter exactly what you are seeing on the screen. So https:// the IP address that is shown there, the port, so 8443, and then the complete target URL that you are seeing at the end. After entering the login information that you are using usually for your UMS console, you should be able to see files. And if you see that, then it should work to 99%. If not, if you're getting some, I cannot read that page, or missing right or whatever, missing right could be something else, but let's stay on not reachable, then please do the typical debugging stuff, like can I ping the server, can I open the port, and so on. But that's basically what you are seeing here. It's creating a download path for the firmware. And if you have the feeling that something is wrong or you want to adapt it, you can change the protocol to HTTP, which is not recommended, but would work, to 9080, or maybe changing to something absolutely different. That's the way to go. But yeah, that's just what I wanted to mention. So you can continue the video if you like. So in the next section, I'm just assigning that to an endpoint. Obviously, that's not what you want to do on a bigger deployment, but in my case, I wanted to test that on that one device because it's my test device where I want to test the update, assigning it, confirming the configuration change, and then just right-click, update, and update. That's it, basically. We have another video which is in the making, which is the advanced mode, where we'll use specific jobs combined with views and so on and so on. But for that case, we're just pushing the update right now to the endpoint. You could also click update when shutting down if you prefer, but in my case, I'm keeping it on update just because I want to do it right now.
Yeah, good stuff. And I think one just commentary here. The two options, even in a profile, you have update when starting up and update when shutting down. So I believe the starting up will work on a reboot, shutting down will not. Is that accurate? I think that just for anybody who wants, just save them the headache. So if you say shut down, it actually has to shut down, and that can't do a reboot.
Exactly. And what I would add is it will not be covered by standby. So if you go to standby, it will not be covered by a standby command. So that's also something which is misleading. But if you want to test it, that's fine. If you want to do that on a wider installation, I would definitely, that's what I'm covering in a spoken form at the end of the video, is to using jobs. That's a teaser for the next time we will meet. Hopefully when I will have the session done, I will upload the video to the website as soon as the move is done, and you will be able to see how the update is working in advanced mode. We already had the advanced mode with buddy updates, but we have a lot of, let's say, cool tools that make your life from an administrative perspective easier. But I know that even on that level, there are already questions. So just saying that's a way I would recommend to test. And if you want to deploy it on a wider audience, please stay tuned. We'll release a new video soon.
Very good. Well, hopefully, do you have a time frame on that one, Seb?
Yeah, sure.
So hopefully by the time we get to maybe in a couple of weeks, we can cover it if it's out by then. Because that's a great topic. I mean, look, everybody's doing firmware updates. If you're whether from an IGEL POC or you've been a customer for 10 years, it's obviously a critical component. And I think when you get into those advanced ways to do it, that's as the admin just so useful, just to be able to kind of automate some of that stuff away. Here's some really cool tools. There's even out in the community, and this is what I've been doing internally here. There's even a way to just publish a little custom application that users can click on and initiate their own firmware update. And I just, as the admin, I can just pick, hey, what firmware they would update to. So there's just so many ways you can do it. So just a great topic. Chris, any thoughts? Any field experience? You've seen I guess kind of anything on this topic?
Yeah, I mean, apart from how to get the firmware, the one thing that I often learned is looking at if you made a point earlier, we've been using this firmware for a year, it seems to be fine, doing a great job, unless you open a case to deal with some issue, and the result is, hey, go to here. That's one scenario. Another one is, I'm okay, but I realize I'm getting a little behind. What do I pick? That's where looking at the release notes. If you go to our website, you can take a look and you can see, and it generally includes, stuff that's, if it's an 1107 branch or 8 or whatever, you can see what's all there. And if you're directed to, we call a private build, for example, that's not listed on our public site, but you'll see it's based on, and you'll see a list of things, and all of that ultimately leads up into a GA public release. But going through that, you'll see like, hey, you'll see like, hey, we got a new version of Firefox or Chromium or whatever. But then there's new features that are added in there, or like one of the ones I remember I just recently added was the wireless to Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi to LAN automatic switch. I've got a multi-home device, my LG all-in-one. I've got a UD7 over here, which has Wi-Fi, and so I have that enabled, and it's actually pretty cool. I could unplug my network cable, and it just switches over to Wi-Fi pretty seamlessly, and then I plug it back in. But that's in a specific firmware. If that's a feature that you're like, hey, that's actually pretty cool. It actually came up on a call yesterday where somebody needed that just in case, sort of as a backup option. Or if it's a laptop, you're in a docking station, you undock and you want to switch seamlessly over. So if you weren't aware of something like that, it's actually a very handy little feature. The release notes would be a way to kind of learn about that. It might also be on the community site, but I would just say build up a regular practice. If you're not in a support scenario where you're trying to get to a resolution and here's the fix, just regularly check in, see what the latest is. The release notes are a good way to kind of read through that and figure out what IGEL's been up to.
And it's probably worth noting like where people can find that. So the way I always get to it, there's probably a quicker way. I always go to the support page up here, go to software downloads.
Yep.
And you can kind of go through the workspace edition. The cool thing is every one of these has a link to the release notes. So
so there's this version. If you go to the KB, this is another way I actually like this, because go to kb.igel.com, go to IGEL OS Creator, that third option there on the right, and then release notes. And then you'll see a list here. And if you click on the top one, then it kind of breaks it down in a HTML-based format, or takes you right to the Notepad version, I guess.
Yeah, it's a text version. Definitely, it's a text file, and you have the same on the UMS side and ICG side too. So it's not only related to the OS side.
Known issues is good. Like if it's like, all right, if I know this is still an outstanding issue, or new features is it breaks it down, and this is a nice way to look at it. And this is kind of how I figured out, like, all right, which version includes that new Wi-Fi thing that I'm looking for. You'd find it here, and then usually some instructions on whether it's on by default or whatever. So
this is much cleaner than what I've been doing. I didn't know that the HTML version existed. I've been in this Notepad, just Control F is my best friend. Hey, what's going on with Citrix or whatever? You type in workspace, and it'll pull up all. I mean, that's basically how I've been doing it for years. So I'm gonna try to start using this HTML version. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's
cleaner.
Somewhere in 11.05 or something. Somewhere they included the HTML version of this now, and it is thanks to the support team and the KB team, they've done a really nice job here in product management to make it visually appealing.
Very cool. So, well, guys, I think it's something that it's such a basic. It's an IGEL, I'd say 101. These are the things you need to be able to be an IGEL admin. One of them is going to be, obviously simple firmware updating, but also the release notes. I mean, knowing what versions and just keeping up on that, because it kind of ties into what your intro said, knowing what features, what security fixes are coming out. That's critical. And that's really going to inform your decision to update or not to update.
Yeah,
I agree.
I think probably the theme that sort of maybe drives a lot of this is, we're all probably using IGEL and unified comms in some form or fashion. So the uccguide.com is another great one where you can say, hey, if I'm using that, and very often you are in many customer environments, but that's about a monthly update, generally speaking, and it just got updated yesterday. So Lars, who writes that guide, does a good job of kind of saying, hey, here's something new that was added or updated for Teams or Zoom or whatever it is. So
very cool. Well, so guys, any updates, any events coming up that the listeners would be interested in? You guys have anything to report there?
Oh, we have definitely something which is, I would say, not private, but there is something coming up for the next week approximately. I know that a lot of listeners are already seeking for a Citrix workspace app integration with 2207. And we just got it fresh off the press, at least, that there is something planned. So I cannot be 100% reliable, but something is planned for next week to be, let's say, less precise, but promising something without promising it. So if someone is asking whether the private build is planned for next week, and I know that a lot of listeners are looking for that, are already thinking about making an announcement next week in the community, but just saying, hey, thanks for your patience. Next week, something will be shown up.
Very cool. Chris, any updates, anything like that?
Well, we've got 2 IGEL Disrupt events coming up here in October in the US. The next one is next week in Houston. If you are in the Texas or general region area, if you can make it out, that's going to be next. Let's see here. It's next Thursday. So, so next Thursday, October 6th in Houston, and then 2 weeks after that, on October 20th, we're going to be in Nashville, and that's going to be at there's a Sonesta hotel near the airport, so that's going to be where that's located. So those are the last 2 in North America. So certainly, if one of those is an option for you, but some exciting things are on tap. But certainly in the month of October, those would be the 2 big ones that will be, bringing people up to speed on the latest with IGEL and our partners, for that matter.
It's been kind of cool. I mean, obviously coming out of COVID to see this approach, right? The Disrupt on Tour. Is that the plan for 2023? Or do you guys have any insight there, or what?
I don't know yet, Seb. I think. Don't quote me on this or hold it to me, but I think in North America, we'll generally have our kickoff at the beginning of the year, probably January, early February. And I believe we're planning on maybe having a Disrupt event, as part of that in a particular location versus the tour thing. We may still do the tour, but I think we'll probably do a large gathering like we did a couple of years ago in Nashville. So more to come on that, but that'll be announced at some point, probably in the fourth quarter of the year here.
Okay, there are obviously already some internal information regarding that, so we cannot share too much. But we seems to have 2 different locations, one in the US and one in Europe.
Yeah,
I mean, there is not a big surprise that for the listeners who are in Europe, we will approximately stay in the same hotel as last time, so in Munich. That will be the town where the Disrupt event will take place together with our internal kickoff. So nothing which is really interesting to our listeners, but just saying, hey, there is also an internal IGEL event just in front of that. So I guess it will be the same approach for the US colleagues. I heard something about something beginning of February, to be a little bit more precise, but stay tuned. We'll definitely share some information on the community or in our podcast, definitely.
Yeah, it'd be great. It'd be great to have the big event again. It's kind of nice seeing everything kind of move back to that. Well, as far as the local events, maybe there's somewhere XenTegra can fill in the gaps. We have a couple things coming up, but as always, I tell people, hey, go to XenTegra.com, click on events. You can look at the different webinars, workshops. A couple things we have coming up. Obviously, a lot of other technology type events here. But a couple in particular I wanted to call out. We're doing an IGEL roadshow on October 27th up in Canada. So I believe it's in Montreal. Yep, and in Montreal. So we're kind of getting some momentum there with the road shows. Maybe more to come. We'll update as that happens.
Will you have to start learning to speak French then, or?
Yeah, we might have to fly you out, Seb. I think you're fluent in French, correct? We got our there we go, native IGEL expert who can speak French. So it's definitely not me. I watched enough hockey growing up to know maybe a couple words, but definitely not fluent. So the other thing we have coming up, actually down in my neck of the woods here in Florida, we're having our so we've been kicking off our XenTegra Florida user group. We get a lot of traction. People are really they want to get back to user groups. They want to get back to meeting. And so we've been getting a lot of momentum here in Florida. We're going to be doing down in Fort Lauderdale, a really cool venue. It's called Extreme Action Park. They've got like all kinds of go-kart racing, all kinds of, just crazy things like that, just like an indoor, almost like a theme park for adults. So all stuff that we would have fun with. And we're going to have that with Nutanix and IGEL, a couple other sponsors, but it's going to be a Nutanix workshop. And then in the middle of it, we're going to do kind of like an IGEL demo and, go through some of the IGEL stuff. So it'll be really cool. It's good to just kind of get back to that and just geek out and enjoy that stuff, but ultimately get together and network. So, we'll definitely update more. But as always, check out our website, XenTegra.com, click on events, all kinds of stuff going on.
Lovely. Looking forward.
All right. Well, great guys. I appreciate you jumping on. Great topic. Seb, enjoy that nice European weather. Chris,
thank you.
Hopefully the storm will kind of evade your area. You won't hit you in any significant way. And guys.
We needed the rain, I guess, but I think we're ready for it. I mean, it's certainly, believe me, looking at the stuff from Florida, it's not as bad. But I've been in North Carolina when it's been very bad. So it's community. We talk about that since we were talking about community. That's really where the power of the community does come in, and people, just stepping up to help each other out. And so, just don't, and the user groups, right? I mean, that's key, where everybody's kind of, wanting to learn, wanting to grow and help each other out. And so maintain that spirit. I think we'll get through these things. So.
Yeah, man. Well, that's a great word to end on. Good message. And anybody out there who's been affected, we're definitely thinking about you guys, praying for you guys. As always, guys, thanks for joining. And it's been a good one. Episode 64. We're gonna go ahead and sign off. Seb, Chris, thanks again. And we'll talk to you guys soon.
All right.
Enjoy your weekend. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Take care, everybody.